My name is Lauren Reed, and if you've ever fought for your worth in a world that seems stacked against you, you'll want to hear my story. Imagine working your fingers to the bone since you were 16, juggling every job you could grab just to pay your bills. I pushed through State University, buried my student loans, and after years of hustle, I finally had enough for a down payment on a townhouse. It should have been a moment of triumph, a celebration of independence. Instead, I found myself staring at court papers that shattered everything. My own parents were suing me for 70% of my home's value, claiming I'd stolen my sister Sophie's future. How did it come to this? As I share this story, do me a favor. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Comment and hit that like button if you've ever felt unrecognized in your own family. My upbringing in a modest Cleveland suburb was supposed to be typical, yet something darker lurked beneath the surface. My father, Dennis, was a practical mortgage specialist, and my mother, Susan, a part-time medical billing assistant. Life should have felt stable, but it didn't. Our home echoed with the sharp rustle of bills piling up and the scent of frustration in the air. Conversations about money hushed abruptly whenever I walked in. For all their hard work, my parents seemed perpetually on the edge of financial disaster. It turned out, poor management fueled our struggles. But what cut deeper were the differences in how they saw Sophie, my younger sister. From the start, she was the golden child, the one with real potential. Sophie has natural talent, they'd say, while I sat in the shadows, feeling like the ordinary one. By 14, that hurt morphed into a quiet determination. I took on chores for our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, just to remind myself I was capable, worthy. But that sense of purpose was a fierce flame in a dark night, flickering every time I compared myself to Sophie. As I fought to prove my value, I had no idea how deep the betrayal would cut when all I sought was respect and a place to call my own. So join me as I unravel this tangled web of family loyalty, betrayal, and the struggle for independence, where every key turned feels like a weight on my chest. Can I reclaim my story before it's too late? I remember the first time I felt the thrill of earning my own money. Mrs. Peterson, my elderly neighbor, would pay me $10 an hour to vacuum dust and organize her medication. It was my first taste of financial independence. I used that cash for school supplies, clothes, and the occasional ice cream with friends. My parents never questioned where it came from. They seemed relieved not to have to provide for me. When I turned 16, I landed my first real job at Sweet Dreams Bakery, just 6 blocks from home. I'd rush there right after school, working until closing at 7:30, then head back to tackle my homework. Diane, the owner, was a kind soul who became my mentor. She taught me about baking, customer service, and the importance of saving. The day I got my first paycheck was a mix of excitement and disappointment. I had dreams of opening a savings account, envisioning State University and independence. But then my father, Dennis, sat me down at the kitchen table. "Now that you're earning money, you need to contribute," he said, sliding a calculator toward me. 30% of your earnings should go to us for rent, food, and utilities. I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. "But Dad, I'm only 16. I thought I should be saving for State University." State University. My mother, Susan, laughed from the doorway. "Lauren Reed, be realistic. With your grades, you'd be better off learning a trade. Besides, Sophie will need a State University fund. She has a real future ahead of her." That 30% rule stuck with me throughout high school. I never missed a payment, even as I watched my sister, Sophie, receive gift after gift. Piano lessons at $200 a month. Ballet classes 3 times a week. Her room was filled with beautiful furniture while I still had the same twin bed from childhood. My routine became grueling yet predictable. School from 8 to 3, work from 3:30 to 7:30, homework until midnight or later. Weekends meant double shifts at the bakery. But deep down, I was fighting for something more than just survival. I was fighting for respect, for recognition, for a place in my own family. Would I ever break free from the shadows? Would I ever be seen for who I truly was? The weight of those questions pressed heavily on my chest, and I knew I had to find a way to reclaim my story before it slipped away forever. Summer breaks were a blur of work and responsibility instead of carefree teenage fun. When I finally splurged on a new shirt, my mother would raise an eyebrow. "Another new shirt, Lorne Reed," she would say, her tone sharp as a knife. Meanwhile, she dropped $300 on a fancy ballet costume for Sophie Warren without a second thought. My junior year, I took on a second job at the local library on weekends. I claimed it was just for extra cash, but the truth, I was secretly building my state university fund. The library paid less than the bakery, but it gave me quiet time to hit the books. Mrs. Peterson, my library boss and an unexpected grandmother figure, saw the toll my two jobs were taking. "Lorne Reed, you're working yourself to the bone," she said, pouring me a warm cup of hot chocolate one chilly afternoon. "What requires such sacrifice?" I poured out my heart about my family's lack of support. Her eyes filled with tears. "Your dreams should be nurtured, not stifled," she replied. From that day on, she paid me extra and insisted I stash it away for state university. By senior year, I had a solid 3.8 GPA and saved nearly $8,000. My guidance counselor believed in me when my own parents didn't. But as acceptance letters rolled in, my family's reaction was muted. "State university is expensive," my dad warned, his voice flat. "Don't come crying to us if it doesn't work out." I assured him, "I've handled everything alone before." When the acceptance letter from State University arrived, my heart raced. Ecstasy mixed with fear washed over me. A partial scholarship covered about 60% of tuition. But what about the rest? What about room and board? Would I find a way to break the cycle of doubt and favoritism that felt like chains around my ankles? Sitting in my room, I inhaled deeply, the scent of fresh rain filtering through the window. I could almost taste freedom on my lips. But it was still miles away. Would my efforts finally earn me the respect I craved? Or would I always be the shadow to my sister's spotlight? I wouldn't let my dreams slip away. Not this time. My carefully saved $8,000 would barely cover my first-year expenses. My parents' reaction to my state university acceptance was lukewarm at best. Over dinner one night, I excitedly shared the news, hoping for at least some acknowledgement of my achievement. State University. "That is expensive for what it is," my father commented, barely looking up from his plate. "You know, we cannot help you with that." "I am not asking for help," I replied. "I have my scholarship and savings. I will figure out the rest." My mother sighed dramatically. "I do not understand why you need to go at all. You have a perfectly good job at the bakery. Diane would probably make you assistant manager if you stayed. Because I want more than that, Mom. I want a career, not just a job." "And what about your contribution to this household?" my father demanded. "How are we supposed to make up that shortfall?" It was in that moment that I realized they had been counting on my income for far longer than I had understood. The 30% I had been paying was not about teaching me responsibility. It was about supplementing their budget so they could afford Sophie Warren's activities. I was not a daughter being guided toward independence. I was an income source. "I am sorry, but I am going to State University," I said firmly, surprised by my own resolve. "I have worked for this opportunity, and I am taking it." The weeks before I left home were filled with cold shoulders and passive-aggressive comments. My parents acted as if I was abandoning the family rather than pursuing education. Only Sophie Warren seemed genuinely happy for me, though at 11 years old, she did not fully understand the tension. Move-in day at the dormitory was a solo experience. My parents claimed they could not take time off work to drive me, so I packed what I could into suitcases and took the bus to campus. My roommate, Jennifer, arrived with her entire family who helped set up her side of the room with coordinated bedding, decorative pillows, and family photos. I unpacked my secondhand sheets and a single-framed photo of Sophie Warren and me in silence. That first night in the dormitory, listening to Jennifer talk on the phone with her parents about how much she missed them already, I cried silently into my pillow. Not because I missed my family, but because I realized how abnormal my relationship with them truly was. The financial reality of State University hit hard and fast. Even with my scholarship, the costs were overwhelming. I found a job as a server at a restaurant near campus within my first week. The hours were brutal. 5 to 11 p.m. on weeknights, meaning I would go straight from classes to work, then return to study until the early morning hours. Weekends were double shifts, often leaving me too exhausted to socialize with other students. During my sophomore year, I added a second job as a teaching assistant for an introductory business course. The pay was minimal, but it looked good on my resume and gave me valuable experience. Between the two jobs, I managed to cover my expenses without taking on excessive student loans, though I still had to borrow about $10,000 per year. My tiny dorm room became my sanctuary in prison. The desk lamp would burn until 3 or 4 in the morning as I struggled to keep up with assignments after exhausting shifts. Cup noodles became my primary food source, not for the State University student cliché, but because they cost less than $1 per meal. I tracked every penny in a meticulous budget spreadsheet, calculating exactly how many hours I needed to work each week to stay afloat. Jennifer eventually moved out, claiming my late-night studying and early morning alarms were disrupting her sleep. She was replaced by Jessica, a scholarship student who also worked part-time. Jessica understood my situation in a way Jennifer never could, and we quickly became friends. My parents help when they can, but there are 5 kids in my family, she explained one night as we both studied late. The moonlight sliced through the tiny dorm window, casting a silver glow on worn textbooks and crumpled bills scattered around. Lauren Reed sat on her frayed mattress, scrolling through congratulatory emails about her internship. Her fingers trembled as she read each one. The hum of study sessions faded into the background, replaced by the nagging sense of dread. Her heart thundered, not from excitement at her achievements, but from anxiety. Why had her father just replied, "We need to talk"? What had changed? As the rain pattered softly against the window, Lauren's mind raced. She had made sacrifices to be here, working tirelessly to prove her worth. But home was another story. Amidst the whirlwind of classes and late-night shifts, her family felt like a distant storm cloud, threatening to drench her hopes. Did they even recognize the lengths she had gone to? Her sister, Sophie Warren, was the golden child, living a life free from the struggles that chained Lauren. Back home, Sophie basked in their parents' approval while Lauren fought to be seen, but it always felt like a losing battle. Their father, Dennis Baker, a frugal man hardened by financial struggles, prioritized Sophie's dreams over Lauren's sacrifices. And then there was their mother, Susan Myers, pouring love and resources into Sophie, blind to the emotional scars left on Lauren. With every phone call home, Lauren felt the familiar sting of comparison. "Sophie Warren needs new point shoes, Lauren. They're $200. Or, "We need $400 for the fridge repairs." Each request was a reminder of her family's expectations, always heavy, always demanding. But this internship? It was her chance to break free. When she met Tyler, everything shifted. He was from a supportive family, always asking about her dreams and goals, filling the gaps in her life where love had been absent. Was it possible to be surrounded by such warmth and understanding? The clock ticked relentlessly as Lauren considered the weight of her family's legacy pressing down on her. She had worked so hard. But would they ever understand? That night, the rain's steady rhythm accompanied her mounting anxiety. Could she find the strength to finally stand up for herself? Or would she remain the unseen sister, lost in the shadows? The aroma of roast turkey and cinnamon wafted through Tyler's kitchen, mingling with laughter and deep conversations. For Lauren Reed, every sound and scent took her back to a different world. one filled with hushed tensions and forced smiles at childhood Thanksgivings. Her fingers grazed the warm fabric of the couch, a stark contrast to the cold, detached environment of her upbringing. Back home, moments of praise felt like a rare luxury. The realization flooded her. Love shouldn't have to be earned. "Why are you crying?" Tyler's gentle voice broke through her thoughts that night as she sat alone in the guest room. "Because I didn't know families could be like yours," Lauren confessed, her voice trembling. She had never known parents who offered unconditional love. That Thanksgiving weekend shattered her perceptions, revealing that her family's warmth was all a facade. In that moment, she knew she deserved so much more. Years later, she graduated with a degree in finance, a 3.7 GPA that earned her honors. But no one from her family showed up to celebrate. Sophie Warren, her sister, always the favored one, had wanted to attend, but their parents claimed they couldn't afford the trip, just 3 hours away. The sting from those words cut deep as she realized how little support she had compared to the golden child. Yet, amidst all this, there was a glimmer of hope. Michael, her internship supervisor, was impressed with her diligence and offered her a full-time role at Meridian Financial Services right after graduation. A starting salary of $50,000 felt monumental, especially after years of scraping by. Lauren faced a crucial choice: housing. While her colleagues flocked to trendy apartments, she felt a pull towards practicality. She opted for a tiny studio, 45 minutes from the office by public transit, knowing it would only take 20% of her take-home pay. She meticulously crafted a 5-year plan, focusing on building an emergency fund and paying off her student loans, ensuring she could eventually save for a home. Even as her salary increased, Lauren's lifestyle remained simple. She carried lunch to work, shopped at discount stores, and relied on public transport instead of splurging on a car. It was all part of her quest for independence, a fight to earn respect, a journey of self-worth, and a determination to break free from the shadow of her sister. Could she forge a family of her own, filled with unconditional love? Or would she always be the unseen sister, the one who fought to be acknowledged? With each passing day, Lauren drew closer to finding the answers, her heart set on proving her value against all odds. Colleagues often invited me to happy hours or weekend trips, but I always said no. Each $60 dinner, each $300 getaway felt like a detour from my goals. My closest ally was Jessica. She had snagged a teaching position at a local high school, and she shared my fierce value of financial independence. Over cheap pizza in my tiny apartment, we dove into my budget spreadsheet while she laughed. "Most people our age aren't thinking about retirement," she teased. I shot back, "Most people don't have to pay rent to their parents at 16. My bond with Tyler had shifted from classmates to close friends, and then to something muddier. He admired my ambition but struggled to understand my relentless pursuit. "You deserve to enjoy life now," he'd urge during our heated debates about my strict budget. "I am enjoying life," I'd insist. "Financial security means everything, more than temporary pleasures." Our differing views led us to a tough decision: to stay friends instead of risking it all on romance. It hurt, but I knew it let me stay focused. At work, my commitment paid off. In just 18 months, I was promoted to financial analyst, bumping my salary to $62,000. Instead of splurging, I kept my frugal lifestyle, pouring every extra cent into my student loans. By the end of my 3rd year at Meridian, I had obliterated $40,000 in debt, built a $12,000 emergency fund, and started saving for a townhouse down payment. It felt monumental. Yet the achievement was shadowed by silence. I had no one who truly understood the weight of this moment. Meanwhile, my relationship with my family was like a hidden fracture, strained and one-sided. Would they ever recognize the woman I had become? The glow of the laptop screen flickered over my tired face as Tyler leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded, concern etched deep. Outside, sirens wailed into the night, framing the silence that followed my admission. Financial security is... The clock ticked. The pizza grew cold. Would I ever let someone in enough to share my struggles? The pattern established during State University continued rare communication, except when financial needs arose. Sophie Warren was now in high school, excelling in music and academics. My parents spoke of her potential with the same reverence they always had, and their expectations for her future were grandiose. Sophie Warren's piano teacher thinks she could get into Juilliard, my mother announced during one of our infrequent phone calls. Of course, the application process and audition preparation will be expensive. The statement hung in the air, the unspoken request clear. I had already sent $3,000 that year for various expenses related to Sophie Warren's activities. Each time I told myself it was for my sister's benefit, not my parents'. But the line was becoming increasingly blurred. "Mom, I have my own financial goals I am working toward," I said carefully. "I cannot be Sophie Warren's State University fund." The silence on the other end was frigid. "I see your sister's future means nothing to you now that you have your fancy job and city apartment." The guilt trip was familiar, but this time something in me resisted. That is not fair. I have helped a lot over the years, but I cannot be expected to finance another person's education when I just finished paying for my own. The conversation ended poorly with my mother claiming I had changed, become selfish and cold. These accusations hurt, but I held firm to my boundaries. 2 weeks later, my father called with a more direct approach. Sophie Warren got accepted to Westfield University. Full 4-year tuition is $40,000 per year. We need to know how much you can contribute. Westfield was a prestigious private university known for its arts programs and astronomical costs. I was stunned by both the assumption I would contribute and the amount in question. "Dad, that is over $160,000 total. I do not have that kind of money to give. You make good money now. You could take out a loan to help your sister. That is what family does." The irony of his statement was not lost on me. Family helps each other when they can. No one helped me with my education. That was different. "You were always independent." "I was not given a choice," I replied. The conversation dissolved into accusations and old resentments. My father eventually hung up after telling me I was breaking my mother's heart with my selfishness. Despite the emotional toll these interactions took, I remained committed to my financial plan. When Sophie Warren herself called to ask about state university funding, I took a different approach. "I cannot pay your tuition, Sophie Warren, but I can help you apply for scholarships, look into more affordable schools, and teach you how to manage money so you can be independent like I had to be." Her response surprised me. "I never asked them to put this on you, Lauren Reed. I know how hard you worked for everything you have." That conversation was the first genuine connection I had felt with my sister in years. We began talking more regularly, with me serving as a sounding board and advisor rather than a checkbook. I helped her apply for scholarships and financial aid, resulting in a substantial package from a state university comparable to the one I had attended. My parents were disappointed by her choice, seeing it as settling for less than she deserved. They continued to pressure me for contributions which I provided in smaller amounts, then requested earmarked specifically for Sophie Warren's textbooks or dormitory supplies. By my 5th year at Meridian now, as a senior financial analyst with a salary of $78,000, I had saved enough for a 20% down payment on a modest home. My years of sacrifice and discipline were about to pay off in the form of the stability I had craved since childhood. What I did not anticipate was how my family would react to this milestone, or how their reaction would forever change our relationship. Townhouse hunting was both exciting and terrifying. I had specific criteria: a small but well-maintained home in a safe neighborhood with good public transportation access priced under $250,000. My real estate agent, Natalie, was patient as we viewed dozens of properties over 3 months. Most first-time buyers your age are looking for condos or continuing to rent, she commented during one of our search days. It is impressive that you are in a position to buy a townhouse outright. I smiled, feeling a rare moment of pride. I have been working toward this since I was 16. Finally, we founded a 1920s bungalow with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small but functional kitchen, and a tiny backyard. At $220,000, it was within my budget. The inspection revealed no major issues, and the location was perfect, close enough to work, but in an affordable neighborhood. Signing the mortgage papers was surreal. Despite years of planning for this moment, I could hardly believe it was happening. The loan officer remarked that it was unusual to see someone my age with such a solid financial foundation. Most people your age have minimal credit history and mountains of student debt, he said as I signed the final documents. I paid off my student loans 3 years ago, I replied, unable to keep the pride from my voice. The day I received the keys, I stood alone in the empty living room of my new home, overcome with emotion. This townhouse represented not just a financial investment, but a psychological one. It was tangible proof that I had overcome my upbringing, that I could provide for myself what my parents never had: security. Jessica and Tyler helped me move in, bringing housewarming gifts and champagne to celebrate. We sat on the floor eating pizza as I had not yet purchased furniture. To Lauren Reed, Jessica toasted, raising her plastic cup. Who worked harder than anyone I know to get here? To having roots, Tyler added. Outside, the hum of traffic faded into a distant murmur. Sunlight pierced through the trees, highlighting every flaw my parents fixated on. Forks clinked against plates in my modest dining room. Each awkward pause added to the tension. I watched as Sophie beamed, desperately scanning our mother's face for that warmth. But it never came. Deep down, I felt the weight of every unspoken word pressing down on me. Just when I thought I could voice my struggles, Dad's voice sliced through the silence. "Lauren, when are you planning to pay us back?" His question hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. How could I explain? I had finally claimed my independence, yet here we were, on the brink of another family battle. Despite everything, I had invited them, hoping this visit might mend our frayed relationship. But my heart raced as I recalled our past, family betrayals and the relentless need for recognition. When they arrived, the weight of my father's judgment was palpable. "It's small," he commented as they crossed the threshold. "Perfect size for me," I replied, camouflaging the sting of his words with forced optimism. Mom whispered dissent as she explored my home, her touch lingering too long on every surface. "This neighborhood isn't very upscale, is it?" I felt a twinge of frustration. "It's safe and convenient for commuting," I retorted. Meanwhile, Sophie, in her second year of state university, sat quietly but brightly, affirming, "I think it's awesome, Lauren. You worked hard for this." I had prepared lunch, hoping to pave the way for new family dynamics. But as we sat around my new dining table, the mood shifted. With a hesitant pause, Mom set her fork down and cleared her throat. "Sophie has some news she needs to share." Sophie's gaze fell to her plate, and a knot formed in my stomach. "I, might have to take a break from school next semester." "What? Why?" I blurted, concern flooding my voice. The scholarship wasn't renewed, and Dad's credit score got my loan application denied. Dad intervened. "We faced some setbacks, medical bills, car repairs. You know how it is." The tension curled in the air like the scent of rain on dry pavement. "So, what's the plan?" I asked, bracing myself for the inevitable ask. Mom's tone shifted to the familiar. "Given your new purchase, we assumed you were in a comfortable financial position." "I just bought a townhouse," I reminded her, trying to steady my voice. "I'm not exactly flush with cash right now." "But you must have savings, or you could take out a home equity loan," Dad interjected. Sophie needs about $20,000 for this year." And there it was, just like that. The fragile moment of celebration crumbled into another cycle of family expectations. How did my independence entangle me in their needs again? All I wanted was to prove my worth, to earn respect, but instead I felt like a fragile thread, straining under the weight of their hopes. Could I rise above the past, or was I fated to falter in the shadow of family lines? I stared at them, disbelief washing over me like a cold wave. "You're really asking me to take out a loan against my new townhouse?" My voice wavered, but I pressed on. "You want me to just let Sophie drop out of state university?" Mom's voice rose, laced with urgency. "After everything we've done for you." The absurdity of her words left me momentarily speechless. "What exactly have you done for me?" I shot back, feeling every ounce of frustration bubble to the surface. "I've been working and supporting myself since I was 16. I paid for my own education. I bought this townhouse on my own." Dad leaned in, indignation etched on his face. "We raised you." "Yes, with rent money I paid as a teenager," I retorted, the bitterness stinging like a sharp wind. The argument escalated, voices clashing, accusations flying. I was selfish, the villain of this twisted tale. "You've always been jealous of Sophie Warren's talent," Mom declared, eyes narrowed. "This is how you punish her." "Hold on, this isn't about Sophie Warren," I insisted. "It's about boundaries and what's reasonable." Sophie Warren, until then a quiet observer, finally spoke. "Please, stop fighting. I'll figure it out. I can take a semester off and work full-time." "Absolutely not," Mom snapped. "You're not throwing your future away for your sister's selfishness." I turned to Sophie Warren, my heart aching. "There are other options. Scholarships, work study." Dad broke in again. "The only option is for you to step up. Family takes care of family." "Is that all I've been to you?" I challenged. "Your ATM?" My patience, once a wellspring of sacrifice, had finally run dry. Before I could take a breath, the air in the room crackled with tension. And then, Sophie's voice trembled, each word heavy with unspoken weight. "I never wanted to go to state university. I only agreed to keep peace." The room fell silent. Light glimmered on her tear-streaked face as our parents gaped, their narrative unraveling before our eyes. The years of sacrifice I'd made weren't for her dreams, but for an expectation she resented. Reality hit harder than any accusation. A family forged in misunderstanding, exposed in an instant. How had love twisted into this chaos? Could we rebuild from the wreckage, or was our bond forever broken? Lauren Reed sat at her kitchen table, heart racing, fingers trembling over legal documents. The dull hum of the fridge echoed in her ears, a reminder of the tension filling the air. She glanced at the summons again, and her breath caught, Sophie Warren's name glaring back at her, not just a passive beneficiary, but a co-plaintiff. Her little sister, silent during their explosive family fight, had signed alongside their parents. In that moment, Lauren Reed felt a knife twist in her heart. Betrayed, not just by her parents, but by the one person she thought she could trust. The family rift ran deeper than she'd ever realized. The bitter taste of betrayal lingered. "How could you, Sophie Warren?" she whispered. Sophie's bright future, glimmering under the weight of parental expectations, now felt like a betrayal. What happened to sisterhood, loyalty? As Lauren Reed fought back tears, memories flooded her. A childhood spent lending a hand, sharing secrets, always looking out for one another. Could they ever mend this? Was the bond forged in love forever broken? "After everything we've done for you," her mother's voice thundered in her mind. Lauren Reed had built a life from the ground up, working tirelessly since 16. "What exactly have you done for me?" she had retorted. The arguments escalated, accusations sharpened like knives. Her parents' words hung in the air, suffocating. She had been labeled selfish, the villain of their fractured story. Then came the call that shattered her world. "Yes, Dad. I've got the papers. Are you seriously suing me?" He replied without hesitation, "We are simply seeking what is fair." The weeks passed heavy with dread. Lauren Reed was left staring at the summons, buried beneath the weight of familial expectations and the crushing fallout. Lawsuits should never come between family, should they? The thought gnawed at her, leaving her feeling isolated in the very home she had sacrificed everything to create. Fighting against the tide of despair, she wondered, would she ever earn her parents' respect? Would she be enough to turn the tide of this heart-wrenching family drama? Yet, with every passing day, Lauren Reed grew more resilient, driven to prove her worth not only to her family, but to herself. As the initial shock faded, clarity emerged. The path ahead might not be easy, but for the first time, she could see the chance for a new beginning, one where she could finally claim her independence. But would she have to do it alone? The storm clouds hung heavy over her life, promises of battles yet to come echoing in her mind. This fight wasn't just about property anymore. It was about respect, self-worth, and finding a way to heal the deep wounds of betrayal before it was too late. Could Lauren Reed confront her family and hold her ground? Or would she lose everything she had fought for? "You cannot possibly think a court will force me to give you my townhouse money. Our lawyer thinks we have a case based on family obligation and implied contract. You benefited from family resources growing up now. You owe a return on that investment." The conversation became increasingly surreal as my father outlined their position as if it were perfectly reasonable to sue one's child. "Dad, please, this will destroy any relationship we still have," I pleaded. "That is your choice, Lauren Reed. Do the right thing, and we can put this behind us." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence for nearly an hour before finally calling Jessica. She arrived at my townhouse 30 minutes later with wine and a determination to help. "This cannot be legal," she insisted, reading through the documents. "They cannot just claim a right to your townhouse because they want the money." The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in my career and began searching for a lawyer. By noon, I had an appointment with Linda Cohen, an attorney specializing in family law. Linda's office was warm and inviting, contrasting sharply with the cold reality of my situation. After reviewing the documents, she looked up at me with a mixture of sympathy and professional assessment. "I have seen some contentious family disputes in my 20 years of practice, but parents suing a child for buying their own home is certainly unique," she said. "The good news is their case has virtually no legal merit, so they cannot actually take 70% of my townhouse number. There is no legal principle that would entitle parents to their adult child's assets based on an implied obligation to a sibling," she explained. "The problem is that defending yourself will still cost money and emotional energy." We discussed strategy documentation I should gather and the timeline for responding to the lawsuit. Linda advised me to compile evidence of my financial independence, including tax returns, showing I had not been claimed as a dependent since age 18. Proof of paying for my own education and documentation of money I had already given to my family over the years. Their case hinges on the idea that you owe them something. We need to demonstrate clearly that, if anything, the balance is tilted in the other direction, she explained. The next few weeks were a blur of legal preparations, anxiety, and disrupted sleep. My work performance suffered as I struggled to concentrate. Fortunately, my supervisor, Michael, had become something of a mentor over the years and noticed my distraction. When I finally explained the situation, his reaction validated what I had begun to understand. "Lauren Reed, what your parents are doing is not normal. It is exploitative and abusive." Hearing someone in a position of authority name the dynamic so clearly was both painful and liberating. I had spent so many years normalizing my family's behavior, making excuses, and accepting blame. Now, outsiders were confirming what I had only recently begun to acknowledge: my relationship with my parents was fundamentally unhealthy. Support came from unexpected places. Colleagues offered encouragement and practical help. My neighbors, upon hearing snippets of the situation, brought meals during particularly stressful days of legal preparation. Even Tyler, despite our complicated history, became a steady presence, helping me organize financial records and providing emotional support. Jessica suggested I look for a therapist to help process the emotional impact of the lawsuit. This is trauma, Lauren Reed. You need professional support to work through it. I found Dr. Russell, a therapist specializing in family estrangement and financial abuse, who offered sliding scale fees. Our sessions helped me recognize patterns of manipulation and begin to unravel the guilt that had been instilled in me since childhood. Your parents created a narrative where your role was to provide, not to be provided for, Dr. Russell explained during one session. As Lauren Reed stood in her dimly lit kitchen, the scent of burnt coffee hung heavy in the air. She counted the crumpled bills in her wallet, each one a reminder of her struggle. Suddenly, the phone rang, a sound sharp as glass. It was her sister, Sophie Warren. "Lauren, I just found out about the lawsuit." Sophie's voice trembled, slicing through Lauren's resolve. "I had no idea they were doing this. I never asked them to sue you." Lauren's heart raced. Could it be true? For the first time, she glimpsed her sister's fear. This wasn't just a battle between sisters. It was a revelation of their parents' manipulation. The chill in Lauren's chest deepened. Who, really, were the combatants in this family war? The lawsuit consumed Lauren's thoughts, invading her dreams. She had nightmares of becoming homeless, of judges ordering her to hand over her townhouse keys. During the day, she obsessively checked her bank accounts, calculating how she would survive if the impossible happened. "You need to understand," her lawyer Linda had said. "The law doesn't work the way your parents think it does." But the mere existence of the lawsuit felt like a profound violation. The home that should have represented security had become a source of anxiety. The parents who should have celebrated her achievements were trying to take them away. As the court date approached, Lauren gathered evidence of her financial contributions, over $15,000 in transfers to her family over the past decade. Sophie provided a written statement, confirming she had never asked for Lauren's support. "We have a strong case," Linda assured her the night before court. "Just try to get some rest." But how could she sleep? The weight of betrayal pressed down on her. The rain outside tapped against the window, a rhythmic reminder of the storm brewing within her family. Would she finally earn the respect she craved? Would she prove her worth? In that moment, Lauren realized this fight was about more than money. It was about reclaiming her independence, about breaking free from the chains of family expectations. As she prepared for court, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could turn the tide in this battle for her life. The scent of fresh-cut grass drifted through the cracked screen door, mingling with the hum of summer reruns on TV. Lauren Reed sat on the couch, clutching a faded trophy from a long-forgotten science fair. She watched her sister, Sophie Warren, twirl effortlessly in the living room, their parents beaming with pride. The whir of the box fan and the sticky lemonade on the kitchen table were vivid reminders of a moment that would haunt her. In that instant, Lauren realized admiration wasn't shared equally in their family. Rest was a distant memory as Lauren braced herself for the courtroom showdown. Facing her parents, Dennis Baker and Susan Myers, felt like stepping into a battlefield where their family dysfunction would be laid bare. The county courthouse loomed ahead, a stone giant designed to intimidate. Dressed in a conservative navy suit, Lauren hoped to project confidence she didn't feel. "Remember, speak only when addressed by the judge," her lawyer, Linda, reminded her. "If you need to respond, write it down and pass it to me." As her parents entered with their attorney, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, they didn't even glance her way. The emotional distance was palpable, a surreal contrast to their physical proximity. Judge Harriet Wilson, a woman in her 60s with silver hair, entered the courtroom. Her expression suggested she had seen it all. After preliminary introductions, she reviewed the case file, her brow furrowing. "I've been on the bench for 17 years, she began, peering over her reading glasses. "This is one of the more unusual family disputes I've encountered. Mr. and Mrs. Baker, you are suing your daughter for 70% of the value of her home to fund your younger daughter's state university education. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," their lawyer replied. "My clients believe their elder daughter has a moral obligation to support her sister's education, especially given the family's financial contributions to her upbringing." Judge Wilson's expression remained neutral, but her tone sharpened. Moral obligations and legal obligations are not always the same thing. Lauren's heart raced. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect, independence, and breaking free from the chains of family expectations. Would she finally earn the recognition she craved? Would she prove her worth? As the courtroom buzzed with tension, Lauren felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could turn the tide in this battle for her life. "Counselor, please explain the legal basis for your claim." The air in the courtroom thickened as the lawyer launched into a convoluted argument about implied family contracts. He claimed that by accepting parental support as a child, I had somehow agreed to a lifelong obligation to support my sister. Beside me, my lawyer, Linda, took notes with calm precision. Every time the opposing counsel made an outrageous claim, she squeezed my arm reassuringly. When it was her turn to speak, she rose with composed confidence. "Your Honor, this case has no basis in family law or contract law. Miss Collins was a minor child under her parents' care, which is a legal obligation parents voluntarily assume when they have children. Children do not contract to receive basic necessities from their parents." With each word, she methodically dismantled their arguments. She presented documentation of my financial independence since I was 16. Tax returns showing I hadn't been claimed as a dependent since high school, proof of self-financing my education, and bank records revealing the substantial financial assistance I had already provided to my family over the years. Far from taking from the family, Miss Collins has contributed over $15,000 to her parents and sister since she turned 18, Linda stated, submitting the bank records as evidence. The judge, her brow furrowed in concentration, reviewed the documents with interest. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins, were you aware of these financial contributions from your daughter?" My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Those were gifts, not related to this matter." $15,000 in gifts seems quite generous from someone you are characterizing as selfish and unwilling to support family, Judge Wilson observed, her tone sharp. My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. "That money was nothing compared to what Sophie Warren needs for her education. Lauren Reed has a good job and just bought a townhouse. She clearly has resources she is withholding." The judge turned to me directly, her gaze piercing. In that moment, I felt the weight of my family's expectations pressing down on me. Would I finally earn the respect I craved? Would I prove my worth? The courtroom buzzed with tension, but a flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn the tide in this battle for my life. As I stood there, memories flooded back. I drifted to a Saturday morning years ago, the scent of spilled coffee mixing with the warmth of baking cornbread. Sunlight streaked the faded kitchen tiles as my father counted bills with distant eyes. I remember clutching a scholarship letter, my heart racing with hope, only to hear my mother call Sophie Warren in from outside to celebrate her music win. The taste of disappointment was sharp, lingering as my hands curled around that letter, unseen. Now, in this courtroom, I was ready to reclaim my story. Would I finally break free from the chains of family expectations? Would I earn the recognition I deserved? The stakes had never been higher. After a final round of statements, Judge Wilson called for a 15-minute recess to review all evidence before making her ruling. As we waited, Sophie Warren approached our table hesitantly. "Can I speak to the judge?" she asked Linda about what Linda inquired cautiously about the fact that I never asked for any of this and do not want Lauren Reed to pay for my education this way. Linda explained that the judge might or might not allow additional testimony at this stage, but advised Sophie Warren to stay close in case an opportunity arose. When Judge Wilson returned, she surprised everyone by calling Sophie Warren forward. "I understand you are Sophie Warren Collins, the younger sister whose education is at the center of this dispute. Do you wish to make a statement to the court?" Sophie Warren stood nervously at the center of the courtroom. "Yes, Your Honor. I want to make clear that I never asked my parents to sue my sister. I did not know about this lawsuit until recently. I would never want Lauren Reed to be forced to pay for my education, especially not by giving up her home that she worked so hard to buy." My mother made a small noise of protest, which the judge silenced with a stern look. Sophie Warren continued gaining confidence. "Lauren Reed has always helped me when she could. She helped me apply for scholarships and financial aid. She taught me how to budget and manage money skills. Our parents never taught either of us. I have options for continuing my education without taking anything from my sister." Judge Wilson thanked Sophie Warren for her statement and then delivered her ruling. "Having reviewed all evidence and testimony in this matter, I find the plaintiff's claim wholly without merit. There is no legal basis for forcing an adult child to finance a sibling's education regardless of any perceived moral obligation. Furthermore, the evidence clearly shows that Miss Clive Lauren Reed Collins has already provided substantial financial support to her family over the years, far beyond any reasonable expectation." She continued addressing my parents directly, "Mr. and Mrs. Collins. The court is troubled by your apparent different treatment of your daughters. You seem to have expected financial independence from one while assuming ongoing support for the other. This is not a matter for legal remedy, but rather family counseling." The judge dismissed the case and, in a final unexpected move, ordered my parents to pay my legal fees, stating that their lawsuit was frivolous and potentially vexatious. As the courtroom began to clear, I remained seated, overwhelmed by the finality of what had just occurred. The legal battle was over, but the emotional damage felt irreparable. My parents left without speaking to me, their rigid backs and quickened pace, conveying their anger at the outcome. Sophie Warren approached tentatively. "Lauren Reed, I'm so sorry about all of this. It is not your fault," I assured her. "Can we talk? Maybe get coffee or something?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further. Whatever came next in our family relationships, nothing would ever be the same again. The lawsuit had forced a confrontation with decades of dysfunction that could no longer be ignored or excused. As Linda gathered our materials, she offered a gentle observation. "Family estrangement is painful, Lauren Reed, but sometimes it is necessary for healing to begin. You have legally established your right to boundaries. Now you can start the process of emotional boundaries as well." Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a complex mixture of vindication, grief, and, surprisingly, hope. For the first time in my life, I had publicly stood up for myself against my parents' expectations and demands. Though the victory felt hollow, given the circumstances, it represented a crucial first step toward a healthier future. The days following the court hearing passed in a blur of conflicting emotions. Relief that the legal threat to my home was gone, mixed with profound sadness about the state of my family relationships. Lauren Reed stood in the kitchen, sunlight streaming through the old lace curtains, the scent of burnt toast lingering in the air. She watched her younger self scrape off the charred edges, her mother praising Sophie Warren at the table for a watercolor painting. Lauren's hands, worn from endless chores, clenched the plate tighter. The clatter of cutlery echoed in her mind, the summer heat pressing down like a weight. Always invisible, always second place. The sting of unworthiness sharpened in that moment, revealing the roots of her sorrow. After a week spent in her sanctuary-turned battleground, Lauren felt the weight of reality sink in. The lawsuit had crystallized a painful truth. Their family dynamic was built on obligation, not love. What was supposed to be support had turned into silence. She hadn't heard from her parents, and she didn't expect to. The judge's words had exposed their dysfunction, but therapy with Dr. Russell began to reshape her understanding. Grief for a relationship that never existed is still valid, the doctor said gently. Lauren discovered she was mourning the parents she deserved, but never had. 2 weeks after the court battle, she met Sophie for coffee, their shared history casting a shadow over the table. Awkwardness hung in the air like a thick fog. "I moved out of Mom and Dad's," Sophie announced cautiously. "I'm crashing with my friend until I figure things out." Relief washed over Lauren. "That's a brave choice," she replied, meaning every word. The tension in the room shifted. For the first time, they were just two sisters, untethered from the weight of family expectations. Sophie's confession about reducing her course load and working at the campus bookstore was met with pride. "You'll get there," Lauren encouraged, her heart swelling for her sister's newfound strength. "You're taking control of your own path." Their eyes met, and a fragile bridge began to form between them. "I always admired your independence," Sophie said, the words weighted with understanding. "I didn't realize it wasn't by choice." In that moment, amid their coffee cups and quiet revelations, a seed of healing was planted. They may have been shaped by their family's turmoil, but they were also learning to forge their own paths, embracing vulnerability while slowly reclaiming their worth. The journey was just beginning, but for Lauren, hope flickered for the first time, illuminating a future that was truly hers to shape. That conversation marked the beginning of a new relationship between us, one based on mutual respect rather than the competitive dynamic our parents had fostered. Sophie Warren began to share her struggles and triumphs with me as a peer, rather than as the favored child seeking handouts. As months passed, I slowly rebuilt my life around the truth rather than family mythology. My home, now free from legal threat, became a true haven. I painted walls, planted a small garden, and gradually furnished rooms with pieces that brought me joy. Each improvement felt like an affirmation of my right to create security for myself. Work provided another source of stability. Michael, understanding the personal crisis I had weathered, offered me additional responsibilities that led to another promotion. The increased income allowed me to start a modest investment portfolio, furthering my goal of long-term financial security. Jessica remained a steadfast friend, celebrating small victories and providing perspective during moments of doubt. "You know what amazes me most about you?" she said during a Saturday spent helping me install kitchen shelves. "Your capacity for joy despite everything. You never became bitter." Her observation surprised me, as I had not recognized this quality in myself. But she was right. Despite the family dysfunction, I had not allowed it to define my entire worldview. I still found pleasure in small things, still believed in the possibility of healthy relationships. Inspired by my own journey, I started a blog about financial independence for young adults from difficult family backgrounds. The response was overwhelming, with hundreds of comments from people sharing similar experiences. What began as a personal outlet evolved into an online support community with regular video chats and resource sharing. Through this platform, I connected with others who understood the particular challenges of building stability without family support. We discussed practical matters like building credit and emergency funds, but also emotional issues like setting boundaries and managing guilt. The community became an unexpected source of healing, a reminder that shared experience diminishes isolation. 6 months after the court case, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. The envelope sat unopened on my counter for 3 days before I found the courage to read it. "Lauren Reed," it began, "the past months have given me time to reflect on our relationship and my role as your mother. While I still believe families should support each other, I recognize now that we placed unfair burdens on you from a young age. This realization has been painful to acknowledge." The letter continued with an awkward but seemingly genuine attempt at apology, stopping short of taking full responsibility, but acknowledging that mistakes had been made. She requested a meeting to begin healing our family, a phrase that simultaneously triggered hope and skepticism. After discussing the letter with Dr. Russell, I agreed to meet my mother at a cafe near my office, a public place where I could leave if necessary. The meeting was tense and uncomfortable with long silences and careful word choices. "Your father still believes we were right," she admitted toward the end of our conversation. "But I miss having you in my life." "I cannot return to the old dynamic," I told her firmly. "Any relationship we have moving forward has to be based on mutual respect, not obligation." She nodded slowly. "I am not sure what that looks like, but I would like to try." This tentative reconnection was neither a fairy tale reconciliation nor a complete failure. Over subsequent months, my mother and I established a careful, limited relationship. We met occasionally for coffeeing conversations focused on neutral topics. My father remained distant, unwilling, or unable to acknowledge the damage done, though he stopped actively hostile behavior. Music hums softly from the speaker as Lauren Reed wipes away a stray tear on the porch. Inside, laughter spills through the open window, echoing the distance between her and her family. She locks eyes with Sophie Warren, her younger sister, and uncertainty flickers in the air between them. The cool night wraps around Lauren like a comforting blanket, but an unsettling tension lingers. Would the family's deep wounds finally begin to heal, or would another hidden truth shatter that fragile balance? A year after buying her townhouse, Lauren decided to host an anniversary gathering. Sophie Warren came, proudly showing off her new boyfriend and a homemade cake. Friends like Jessica and Tyler, colleagues who stood by her during the lawsuit, filled the room with warmth. Yet her mother, Susan Myers, declined with a polite note. It felt conspicuous, a reminder that the road to full family reconciliation was still a long way off. As Lauren gazed around, she felt enveloped by those who valued her for who she was, not just what she could do. Her understanding of family had transformed. Family wasn't just blood or duty, it was a community forged through mutual support and genuine love. The townhouse that had become a battleground was now undeniably hers, emotionally and legally. Every mortgage payment felt like an affirmation. Each new improvement was her declaration of independence. This painful journey illuminated a profound lesson: the difference between guilt and responsibility. For years, Lauren had carried guilt about not meeting her parents' demands, for putting her needs first, for setting boundaries. Therapy and life experiences showed her that being responsible to oneself isn't selfish, it's survival. Boundaries weren't walls. They were healthy definitions of where she ended and others began. Sometimes moments of doubt would creep in, days when she mourned the relationships she could never have. Yet these pangs became less frequent as she carved out a life aligned with her own values. Standing in her kitchen today, preparing for another busy day in the home she fought to claim, Lauren realized true freedom comes not from external validation, but from deep internal conviction. Her parents may never grasp or accept her choices, but their approval wasn't necessary for her peace. This townhouse had evolved beyond mere wood and bricks. It had become a symbol of resilience and the embodiment of her journey. But just as happiness settled in, would another family secret alter this newfound peace? The rain began to fall softly, its fresh scent mingling with the memories of hurt and healing. Could Lauren truly embrace her future, when the shadows of her past still loomed? Lauren Reed stood at the threshold of her new apartment, the click of the door behind her echoing freedom. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but relief. Light spilled across unpacked boxes, each one a promise of new beginnings. The silence was thick, broken only by her ragged breaths and the distant hum of a city coming alive. Tears stung her eyes as she let out a shaky exhale, her burdens lifting, her future wide open. In this moment, her strength wasn't loud. It was the quiet realization that she finally belonged to herself. This journey was long and fraught with family betrayal. Lauren's sister, Sophie Warren, always the favored child, embodied the unspoken expectations of their parents, Dennis Baker and Susan Myers. While Lauren worked tirelessly to earn their respect, Sophie stood in the spotlight, basking in their approval. How could she compete against a shadow that always loomed over her? In a world where her father's frugality felt suffocating and her mother's emotional investment in Sophie seemed like betrayal, Lauren struggled for self-worth. The financial hardship only added weight to her shoulders, a weight she had to bear alone. Yet she fought. She battled through resentment and tears, grappling with the guilt of wanting her own life separate from familial obligations. Now, she tenderly shaped her townhouse into a home. Every mortgage payment confirmed her independence. It was proof she could rise above the insecurities drilled into her by the very people who should have supported her. But would this newfound stability endure when shadows of the past still loomed? As rain softly pattered against the window, its fresh scent mingled with memories of hurt and healing. Lauren pondered. Could she truly embrace her future while grappling with the weight of unspoken family secrets? With boundaries intact, she was no longer the person drowning in their expectations. She was free. Yet questions lingered. What if the battle was never over? What if her family's expectations would rise from the ashes of their shared history once again? As she prepared for another day in this sanctuary she fought to claim, Lauren realized true freedom is born not from approval, but from the deep conviction of knowing she chose her own path. Would she find resolution in the face of new trials? Or would the old wounds resurface, threatening her journey yet again? The echoes of her past kept whispering, reminding her. She was not simply building a life, she was fiercely guarding her right to live it on her own terms. It represents my right to define my own path, to establish healthy boundaries, and to create security on my own terms. The journey here was longer and harder than it should have been, but that only makes the achievement more meaningful. What would you do if faced with a choice between family expectations and your own well-being? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, the family you choose can be as meaningful as the family you were born into.